Good morning. It's about 8:30 in the morning, 17 degrees outside, and I'm out for my walk. And the reason I'm out for my walk so early, when usually I go around 10 o'clock, something like that, is because today is one of those days where I had absolutely no idea what to talk about. So I decided to go for a walk, thinking, maybe I'll think of something while I'm walking. I just got to the park, but on the way, I'm like, you know what? There's a story I've been wanting to share from my past for a while. And since I'm pretty sure I won't think of anything interesting to say aside from that, let's share that story. Plus, it's a pretty hot story, so it's gonna warm me up. And before you get the wrong impression, I don't mean hot as in sexual, I mean hot as in it was hot when it happened. So it happened a couple days after I ran the ultra marathon back in 2001. So if you've watched that video, just know that this happened. I think it was 3 days after that. And my logic for this was I'm going to do this second challenge 3 days after. That way I have a couple days to recover from the ultra marathon. And at the same time, it's going to allow me to completely recover and get to relax, because the challenge that I decided to do was let's spend 5 days in complete darkness. I know it's ironic given the fact that it was in 2001, everyone was going through COVID, everyone was freaking out, feeling isolated, there was lockdowns and everything, and most people were feeling that need to kind of like reach out and connect, and I just went the complete other direction. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna isolate myself even more. Because that's just who I am. Especially back then, I loved to challenge myself, and I was really in this mode, this mindset of let's test my limits, let's just try crazy things just to see what I can handle. So that's kind of what happened. So what I started by doing was, obviously it would be in my apartment because I wasn't allowed to go out and stuff like that. So I found a bunch of cardboard, took some duct tape, and literally duct taped over every single window and door in my apartment. And just to make sure that no light would come in, I put two layers of duct tape. Unfortunately, what I didn't consider was the fact that light always finds a way to get through somehow. And apparently, duct tape isn't that effective at keeping out light, because even 2 layers was not sufficient. It's not like it was super bright, but it was just enough that it could tell the difference between when it was day and when it was night, which kind of sucked in a way, because the whole point of this experiment, the whole point of this challenge was to completely isolate myself in darkness, so none of my senses would be able to function normally, and I kind of like lose track of time. And my hope was that I would discover something about myself, something that I never realized, something that I never knew. That's kind of what I was expecting to happen. What ended up happening was something very different, and unsurprisingly, probably quite boring. So anyway, back to what I was saying. So boarded up all the windows with cardboard, 2 layers of duct tape around the door as well. Duct tape the light switches just to make sure, in case I forgot and flicked it on. Removed the light bulb from the fridge. I went all out. I did everything I could to be in complete darkness. And as a result of that, since when I started everything, when I planned everything and set everything up, I was expecting the duct tape to work and to not be able to tell the difference between day and night, I figured I'm going to lose all track of time. I need to know when the 5 days are over, because then I could keep going for a week, 10 days. Like, I didn't know what to expect, what would happen. So I'm like, I don't want to risk it. So I plugged my phone in to make sure it wouldn't run out of battery, set an alarm for 5 days in the future, and, started the challenge. Ironically enough, turns out, I don't know what happened, but for some reason at some point during those 5 days, my phone turned off. So it's kind of a good thing in a way that I was able to tell the difference between night and day, so I could kind of keep track of the days, because otherwise my alarm never would have gone off, and I don't know how long I would have ended up doing this challenge. So it's kind of a good thing when you think about it. So things started off relatively simple. I started at, I believe it was midnight. Yeah, I started at midnight on midnight Monday morning, Sunday night, depending on how you look at it. And then I do entire week, so from Monday to Friday, and I set the alarm for that. So when I started, I didn't realize this whole issue with the, oh wait, I can still tell when it's day. It was only in the morning, 6 or so hours later, that I started to realize that. So anyway, first night just slept, wasn't that much to do. Then I woke up in the morning, that's when I realized like, oh crap, okay, I can tell the difference between night and day. Not ideal, but it's all part of the challenge, so let me just deal with it and make the most of the situation. So, I don't have, because this was a couple of years ago, so I don't remember the details of day by day, exactly what happened, exactly what I went through. So I'm going to share the overall experience. And that experience was, first of all, it's very strange to eat in complete darkness. I prepared meals in advance, but when you don't have that visual stimuli of looking at what you eat, it's a very strange experience because you're like, I could literally be eating anything. My taste buds are telling my brain it's this specific thing, but for all I know, like, there's bugs in my food. Like, okay, obviously there's not, but it's like you don't know, and that's the thing. So it completely changes that experience. I've never been to one of those restaurants where, they serve you in the dark and everything's done in the dark, but that kind of gave me an idea of what it would be like. So that was kind of an interesting thing. The other interesting thing that I did not expect was how good my brain is at keeping me entertained. Because I figure like, hey, 5 days in complete darkness, I'm going to be bored out of my mind to the point where I will eventually discover something I've never discovered in myself. That's what I was expecting. Turns out my brain is just very, very good at distracting me. And even though 5 days is a long time to have absolutely no contact with anyone or anything or no visual stimulation, because a little light was coming in, just enough to tell it was night and day, but it's like not enough to really see or do anything. So I literally spent, more time than I've ever spent in bed, obviously, or sitting down, but I just spent so much time thinking. And, I would like to say that I thought of fantastic, wonderful, creative things, but at the time, I recently, lost my virginity, started having sex and everything, and turns out my brain was just completely obsessed with sex. And that's, not literally everything I thought about the entire time, but mostly. Which surprised me and kind of disappointed me in a way. I'm like, I thought I was more involved than that. I guess not. That sucks. But it was a fun thing to discover in a way. And the other thing that I discovered was when you spend a lot of time in bed, you end up being sore, which is ironic considering the fact that I ran an ultra marathon, I think it was 3 days before. But for some reason, because I'd been running consistently, I guess, my body had already recovered. So physically, I was fine. That's not why I was sore. I was sore because I spent so much time in bed that my body was like, I can't take this anymore. You need physical activity. So at some point, I just started literally walking back and forth in my apartment like a crazy person. And speaking of crazy, it got to the point where I was so bored that I would sit down in my chair, and I don't think it was a nursery rhyme. I think it was, one of those like tongue twister type things. I don't remember if it was this one specifically, but it was something along the lines of, like Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear, Fuzzy Wuzzy had no hair, Fuzzy Wuzzy wasn't fuzzy, like one of those things. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I remember sitting there in that chair, rocking back and forth, repeating that over and over and over again just because it was my only source of entertainment. And because I boarded up all the windows and the doors and everything, there was no air circulation. So it ended up becoming very, very, very hot. So I ended up just being naked most of the time. So there I was, sitting in my chair, rocking back and forth, completely naked, repeating those same words over and over again. And in my head, I'm like, I seem like a crazy person right now. If anyone sees me in this very moment, I would seem insane. They would send me to a mental hospital. But at the same time, it was also hilarious because I'm like, okay, I guess this is what the human brain does. It will literally do anything to keep you entertained, no matter how evolved you like to believe that you are. And it's just, even though that's not like, that and the obsession with sex at the time and everything, it's like, it's not what I was expecting to discover about myself, but it is what I ended up discovering about myself. But the most important part and what made this entire challenge worthwhile was because I was able to tell the difference between day and night. I was able to know, like, okay, today is the 5th day. I don't know exactly what time it is, but, okay, the light is gone, so that means it's night. So, within the next 3-4 hours, it's going to be midnight. The challenge is going to be over. But it just got to the point where it was so hot, I felt like I couldn't breathe anymore, that I'm just like, I don't know exactly how much time is left. Maybe the challenge is officially over. Probably not, because my alarm didn't go off, because at the time I didn't know that it wouldn't go off. But it just got to the point where it was so hot and I felt like I was suffocating. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So I went to the kitchen, grabbed a knife, came back, felt around until I knew approximately where the window that opened was, cut a hole in it, pulled it open, reached through, yanked the window open, and that one breath of fresh air. And technically it's not fresh air because at the time I was living in downtown Montreal, second biggest city in Canada, so definitely not the freshest air there is. But after spending 5 days in complete darkness, sweating my ass off, with no air circulation, that one first breath of fresh air was the freshest, the purest, the most magical air I have ever inhaled in my entire life. And that one inhale made those entire 5 days of boredom and insanity and suffering completely worth it. Just like a few days before when I did the running challenge, and even though I failed the challenge, that experience of walking down the stairs when my body was completely destroyed made it all worth it. It was the same thing for this first breath of fresh air in that instant when I opened the window and it just, I felt the wind in my face. It was to the point where I literally cried. Maybe it was because, my eyes were exposed to the light for the first time in 5 days. Maybe it was because my eyes were, like the wind was in my eyes. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was a combination of everything. But yeah, it literally made me cry. And it was like one of the most transformative experiences of my life, which is weird. Because for me, in my brain, I'm like, it's going to be the experience of, being in complete darkness, being isolated for 5 days. I'm going to discover things about myself. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to be reborn as a person. And the entire time, my brain's like, sex, 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 sex. And it's in that one moment when I open the window and I get that breath of fresh air, that's what changed everything. That's what made it all worth it. And that's why I wanted to share this story, because even though it's not what I was expecting, it's exactly what I needed. And every time I did a challenge like that, there was always one of those moments. And it's never been about the challenge itself. It's always been about those moments, those singular moments that sometimes happen in a fraction of a second that change who you are, that change how you perceive the world. And that's why I did so many of those challenges. Now, of course, I don't need to do that because the world or the universe has given me the most extreme challenge possible, and all I can do right now is survive. But you know, that's why I did all those challenges, even though I didn't know it at the time. It was to prepare myself for this. And it was just a very interesting, unexpected, and fun experience. So, hope you enjoyed the story. And now it's time to go finish my walk. Talk to you tomorrow. And I missed the button. Yes. I missed it again. Wow, okay. Let me stare at it.